exactly. And I think, Adam, if we do wear the goggles of looking at this as a continuum of experience, from beginning to end, I think there can be endless opportunities on how we can really uplift that experience all the time. There are so many moments of elevation that we can identify there. We can turn the volume on the experience, quite high.
If I can interrupt you, I think the volume is already very high because in my job, most of the time, I'm probably thinking about my tasks and my customer. When it comes round to my annual review and my job interview, and that's when I think about my employer really intensively. So my attention, my engagement with the employer as an employer and not just as a workplace is already quite high. And that's why it's important to get that right, because in that moment of my annual review, I'm thinking about my manager, I'm thinking about my department, I'm thinking about my company.
I have personally wanted to always see, okay, there are these moments, if speaking about assessment, speaking about, promotions, etc. How can we really make something out of them? How can we make them much more spectacular? And sometimes there are opportunities to show people as heroic as they are, not only in the work context. Can we do it in their family context? Can we do it in a more social context? Can we show that outside? How can we design each of these experiences separately and to make it something that's unique? Joe Pine speaks about customer surprise and speaks about the expectancy element and how this moves from customer surprise into customer suspense. That they are actually not feeling entitled for the surprise, but rather looking forward to how it looks different next time, right? And I think when you are working as an employee in a company, definitely the repetition element is there. And then it becomes more of like, how can the employee themselves look to the next time this experience happens, and how different it is going to be.
It's really hard. That's really hard because we know that surprise is important, and we also know that constantly surprising people is very, very hard. Yeah, and that becomes a very high investment on constantly investing in the next new thing, because once you've done it once, they expect it. You need the next thing on top of that. If you get a free glass of fruit juice when you check into the hotel, you expect it next time as well. Yeah, and one way that I've found, which is to reduce the energy cost, if you like, the thinking cost, and maybe even financial cost of constantly having to be surprising, is to let your employees be themselves, because human beings are always unique. So every time you meet someone and they're not hidden behind the facade of being just the dentist or just the receptionist or just the police officer or whatever, are able to be themselves, that is always a unique moment. There's always a surprise in there because every human is different. There's a fantastic guy who works the passport counter in Frankfurt Airport. He's a German policeman, and he looks, I'm sorry if this is offensive, but he looks like a cartoon German. He's got a round face, he's got red hair, got a big smile. He's a sort of chunky little guy, He looks like all the sort of, you can imagine him being a sausage butcher or something. And what he's decided to do, and you can see he's working on this, is he's decided as he checks the passports to greet everybody in their own language. Yeah? And that's just his thing. And so he probably knows how to say that in 50 or 60 languages. Anything else, he asks them, how do I say that in your language? Yeah? And it's wonderful. His line is laughing and people are talking to each other in the line. He's still doing his job. He's still doing a proper security control. But he's made a little human effort, which is fun for him. Someone says, oh, this is what it's like in Tajiki. Okay, and he tries to write it down like this. And they say, yes, I'll know next time. Yeah? And it's lovely to see someone who makes that tense moment of crossing the border into the European Union in Frankfurt, in Germany, makes that into a special human moment. And that's because his commanding officers, his employer, are letting him be himself.